The sun hadn't yet risen over Fort Bragg when Sergeant Emily Carter stood at the security checkpoint, her breath visible in the early morning chill. The world was quiet, painted in cold shades of blue and gray. Beyond the wire fence, the base stretched wide and endless, dotted with floodlights that flickered like stars fading into dawn. She adjusted her patrol cap, the brim shadowing her sharp eyes, and checked her sidearm with practiced precision. Routine. Everything about her life now revolved around routine. Gate duty wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a mission that earned medals or commendations. It was 12 hours of standing, watching, checking IDs, waving vehicles through, and pretending not to notice the faint looks of boredom or pity from soldiers rushing past to more important assignments. But Emily didn't mind. The quiet suited her. She had seen enough noise in her lifetime. Her boots were polished, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. The younger guards admired her discipline, even if they didn't fully understand it. There was something about the way she carried herself controlled, composed, almost too calm, that set her apart. But she rarely spoke more than necessary. "Morning, ma'am," a private greeted her as he approached the booth. She nodded once. "Morning." Her voice was low, clipped, professional. She scanned his ID, verified his vehicle pass, and waved him through. The hum of engines filled the air as military trucks rolled by in orderly lines. Beyond them, a faint orange glow painted the horizon. Another day was beginning. Emily took a sip from her thermos black coffee, no sugar, and let her eyes wander briefly across the parking area. Everything appeared normal. Everything was supposed to be normal. That was how she liked it. But beneath that calm, buried deep in her bones, lived a tension she could never quite shake. She had been trained to notice the smallest irregularities, the sound of a misplaced step, the weight of a silence too long. Years of combat did that to you. Even here, at a routine stateside post, her instincts never truly rested. Her radio crackled. "Gate 2, status check." "Gate 2, all clear," she replied smoothly. Her call sign flashed on the display, Falcon 01. No one ever paid it much attention. The code had been assigned by the system, a leftover designation from years ago when she'd transferred to base security. To the others, it meant nothing, a simple tag. But for Emily, it carried an echo, a shadow of something that once defined her entire life. She tried not to think about it. The past belonged to another version of her, a version buried under classified files, sealed operations, and the silence that came after everything went wrong. She wasn't that person anymore. Now she was just Sergeant Carter, reliable, steady, unremarkable. And she preferred it that way. At 0600, the change of guard rotation began. She stayed an extra 10 minutes, out of habit more than duty. "You don't have to keep doing double shifts, Sarge," the corporal said as he arrived, yawning. "I like the quiet," she answered simply. He laughed and shrugged. "You're one of a kind." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. When the corporal left to check the logbook, Emily leaned on the booth's metal frame, letting her gaze drift toward the tree line beyond the fence. The wind stirred the leaves, carrying a faint scent of pine and engine oil. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter whirred to life, its blades chopping the air. That sound steady and familiar brought back flashes she didn't want. Sandstorms, flashing lights, voices shouting in static. She exhaled slowly and blinked them away. Her fingers brushed the edge of her badge. The insignia gleamed faintly in the morning light, a reminder of duty and belonging. Yet, deep down, she knew she didn't quite belong here, not the way others did. These soldiers had camaraderie, shared routines, laughter between shifts. Emily carried ghosts. The young private returned, snapping her from her thoughts. "Ma'am, you're good to head in if you want breakfast. he offered politely. She gave a faint smile. Appreciate it, but I'll stay till the next convoy passes. He hesitated, then nodded. No one argued with Sergeant Carter. She wasn't intimidating through rank. There was something else. An aura of quiet authority, like someone who'd seen things the rest of them couldn't imagine. At 0615, the convoy arrived. A long line of armored Humvees, led by a logistics truck. Emily straightened immediately, scanning each vehicle, her hand resting on the radio at her shoulder. The drivers presented their IDs. She checked the manifest, routine as always. But then her gaze caught on one truck's slightly off alignment, the driver avoiding eye contact. Her instincts flared again, subtle but sharp. "Morning, soldier," she said, her tone even. "ID." The man handed it over, his fingers trembling just slightly. She noticed. The ID looked legitimate, but his uniform bore a patch too new for the faded fabric. "Where are you headed?" "Supply depot," he said quickly. Too quickly. She nodded, pretending to accept it, but she tapped her earpiece. "Gate 2. Verify clearance for convoy vehicle number 7. A pause. Static. Copy. Gate 2. Stand by." She waited. The man gripped the steering wheel tighter, sweat glinting on his brow. After a long 10 seconds, the voice came back. "Vehicle 7. Not on today's list." Emily's eyes flicked up, locking on the driver. Her voice dropped, calm but firm. "Step out of the vehicle, soldier." The man froze. "Ma'am, there's been a mistake. Now." He hesitated, then reached for something too fast. Emily's hand went to her holster, but before she could draw, another guard approached from behind, weapon ready. The man froze again, realizing he was caught. After a tense silence, he lifted his hands and stepped out. The ID slipped from his fingers, landing in the dirt. Fake. They detained him without incident, but the commander later told her the truth. The man wasn't a soldier. He'd stolen a uniform and tried to breach the base perimeter for unknown reasons. "Good instincts, Carter," the commander said later, almost impressed. She nodded respectfully, but said nothing. It wasn't pride she felt, it was inevitability. Her instincts had kept her alive before. They would again. After the debrief, she returned to the gate. The same post, the same quiet. Yet something in the air had shifted. The other guards looked at her differently, now more aware, more respectful. She didn't ask for it, but she could feel it. As the sun climbed higher, warming the asphalt, she allowed herself a moment of calm. Her eyes wandered across the horizon, where the sky was painted gold and pink. For a fleeting second, it felt peaceful, almost like the world was forgiving her for surviving. Then her radio crackled again. "Gate 2, this is command. Confirm ID Falcon 01. Respond." The voice was different. Not from base security. Not even from the usual comms network. The channel was encrypted old frequency, old clearance level. One she hadn't heard in years. Her blood ran cold. The young guard beside her frowned. "Falcon 01? Who's that?" Emily didn't answer. Slowly, she lifted the radio, her hand steady, though her heart pounded like a drum. "Falcon 01. Confirmed," she said softly. The air around her changed. The guards exchanged confused looks. Even the convoy drivers turned their heads slightly, sensing something strange. That call sign, the way she said it, carried authority, weight, and history they couldn't understand. Emily lowered the radio, her expression unreadable, her eyes distant. The past she had buried for years had just spoken her name again. And somewhere, beyond the gates of the base, someone had been waiting for that reply. The next morning began like any other routine, mechanical, quiet. The mist still clung to the ground, curling like smoke around the fences as Sergeant Emily Carter took her position at Gate 2. The faint rumble of distant trucks rolled through the air. She nodded to her partner, Private Reeves, who looked half awake and nursing his coffee. "Morning, Sarge," he muttered. "Morning," Emily replied, eyes already scanning the checkpoint approach. She could feel the tension still sitting heavy in her chest from yesterday. The call sign Falcon 01 had echoed through the night in her mind like a ghost. She hadn't heard that name since the desert, since that day, but no one had mentioned it again. Not the commander, not Combs, not even Reeves, though she caught him glancing at her more than once, curiosity burning in his young eyes. She preferred it that way. The fewer people who knew what that call sign really meant, the safer everyone was. At 0830, the normal flow of vehicles resumed. A convoy from logistics, a few civilian contractors, and some supply deliveries. Emily went through the motions check, scan, wave through. Her expression calm, her stance steady. But deep down, her nerves hummed with a quiet warning she couldn't place. The kind of instinct that only comes from years of surviving situations where one wrong move meant never coming back. At 0905, a black SUV appeared on the horizon. No convoy, no escort, no visible tags. It rolled forward slowly, its windows tinted darker than regulation allowed. Reeves squinted. "You expecting anyone from command, Sarge?" "No," Emily said, her voice clipped. "That vehicle's not on today's schedule." She stepped out from the booth, boots crunching against the gravel as she signaled for the SUV to stop. It did, smoothly, like the driver had been expecting her to. The engine purred low. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then the tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in his late 40s clean-cut hair, stone-gray eyes, and a faint scar along his temple. He wore civilian clothes, but something about his posture screamed military. "Morning, Sergeant," he said, his tone even too polite. "Beautiful day for gate duty, isn't it?" Emily studied him. "ID, sir." He smiled faintly, reached into his jacket pocket, and handed over a card. Reeves leaned over her shoulder, curious. Emily's eyes narrowed. The ID looked legitimate Defense Department credential, but it lacked the embedded hologram used on all current passes. She turned it slightly under the light. Fake. "Purpose of visit?" she asked, her tone still professional, but her right hand subtly hovered near her holster. "Visiting the commander," the man replied smoothly. "He's expecting me." Emily's voice remained calm. "That so? Funny, I didn't get that memo." He chuckled softly, as if amused by her firmness. "You always were sharp, Falcon." Her blood froze. Reeves frowned, glancing between them. "Falcon?" Emily didn't move. The way he said it wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was recognition. Her radio crackled at that exact moment, an encrypted frequency breaking through the static. "Falcon 01. Confirm identity." Reeves looked startled. "That's you?" Emily's heart hammered, but her expression didn't change. Slowly, she lifted the radio to her lips. "Falcon 01. Confirmed." The man's smile widened just slightly. "Good to know you still answer when called." "Step out of the vehicle," she ordered coldly. He tilted his head. "That's not necessary." "I'm not asking." For a moment, it felt like time stopped. The morning air seemed to thicken, silence stretching like a live wire between them. The man finally opened the door and stepped out tall, composed, hands visible. Everything about him radiated control. Emily noticed the small details automatically. The subtle bulge under his jacket, likely a sidearm, though concealed. The faint mark of a military-grade wristband. The measured way he moved, like a man trained never to make sudden motions. Reeves moved behind Emily, uneasy. "Sarge, You want me to call this in? She gave a small nod. Quietly. The man's eyes flicked toward Reeves, then back to her. Don't bother, he said, almost casually. Command already knows I'm here. Her hand rested fully on her holster now. Name, Colonel Mason, he said after a brief pause. Though that's probably not the name you remember. Her grip tightened. Mason. That name hit like a strike to the gut. Colonel Daniel Mason, the man who'd led her old unit years ago. The one who'd ordered the mission that went to hell. The one who'd been listed Kier long before she disappeared. You're dead, she said flatly. He smiled faintly. So are you, Sergeant. Reeves looked completely lost. Sarge, what the hell's going on? Emily ignored him. You don't belong here, she said to Mason. Whatever this is, it's off the books. Everything's off the books when you've been erased, he replied quietly. His tone had changed colder, now sharper. You shouldn't have answered that call sign, Falcon. Once it's live again, it doesn't go dormant. She took a slow step forward. Why are you here? To make sure you remember who you were. That sentence hit her harder than a gunshot. Memories she'd fought to bury clawed their way back desert winds, coded radio bursts, a mission that ended in flames and screams. The betrayal. The silence afterward. Reeves called for backup under his breath, but before he could finish, Mason lifted a small device from his pocket, something sleek, black, and unfamiliar. He pressed a button. A faint pulse rippled through the air. Emily's radio went dead instantly. EMP, Mason said casually. Temporary. Just for privacy. She drew her weapon instantly, aiming center mass. Turn that off, now. He raised his hand slightly, unafraid. Still sharp. That's why they called you the Falcon. Reeves unholstered his weapon too, voice trembling. Sir, drop it, now. Mason's eyes flicked to him, almost pitying. Kid, you have no idea what you're standing next to. Enough, Emily said sharply. You're under detainment until clearance is verified. She moved closer, motioning for him to turn around. He obeyed slowly. But as she reached for his arm, he spoke again, voice low. They're coming, Carter. And when they do, they won't be asking for permission. You'll want to be ready. Her grip tightened, but before she could respond, the faint whine of an approaching vehicle broke the tension. An MP truck, lights flashing, skidded to a stop nearby. 2 officers jumped out, weapons drawn. The lead MP saluted Emily. Mom, command's orders, take him to interrogation immediately. Emily's eyes narrowed. How did command know? They said they've been expecting this. She glanced at Mason. He simply smiled, that same unsettling calm in his eyes. Told you, he murmured. They never stopped watching you. As the MPs cuffed him and led him away, Mason turned his head slightly, speaking just loud enough for her to hear. Check the archives, Sergeant. Operation Resurrect isn't finished. Emily watched silently as the SUV and the MPs disappeared down the road. Her radio flickered back to life, static clearing. Reeves looked shaken. Sarge. Who was that guy? She holstered her weapon slowly, her expression unreadable. Someone who should have stayed buried. He hesitated, sensing there was more she wasn't saying. What did he mean? They're coming. She didn't answer. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the morning light was breaking fully now, blinding and golden. For the first time in years, she felt something heavy pressing on her chest, not fear, but inevitability. Because deep down, she knew Mason wasn't lying. If her call sign had been activated again, it meant the past wasn't finished. And Falcon 01 wasn't just a name anymore. It was a warning. The following day, Fort Bragg buzzed with quiet speculation. The story of the mysterious black SUV and the detained stranger had spread like wildfire. No one knew the full truth, but soldiers whispered theories between shifts. Some said the man was CIA. Others swore he was an undercover colonel testing security readiness. But all of them mentioned one strange detail: how Sergeant Emily Carter had been called by a code name none of them had heard before: Falcon 01. Emily walked through the base as if nothing had changed. Her uniform was immaculate, her demeanor calm, her voice steady. But inside, a storm brewed. The moment she heard Mason speak that call sign, her world had shifted. She had buried that part of herself long ago, along with everything that came with it. Now, someone had dug it up. She entered the security office, where Captain Rivera was waiting. The man was young, sharp, and ambitious, a recent transfer from the Pentagon. He smiled politely as she approached, but there was something in his expression she didn't trust. "Sergeant Carter," he said, motioning for her to sit. "Quite the eventful day yesterday." Emily stood instead. "I submitted the incident report, sir." The suspect was turned over to military police as instructed. "Yes, I saw that," Rivera said, folding his hands. "But the part that caught my attention was this call sign, Falcon 01. Care to explain what that means?" Emily's eyes didn't waver. "It's just an old radio tag from my previous deployment, sir. Probably recycled through the system." Rivera smiled faintly. "Recycled call signs don't activate encrypted channels, Sergeant." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Emily kept her face neutral, but her pulse quickened. He was fishing. "With respect, sir," she said quietly, "that frequency shouldn't even exist anymore." Rivera leaned forward. "And yet, it does. Someone used it to reach you directly. And the man you detained, Colonel Daniel Mason, he's on record as deceased since 2015. Care to tell me why a dead colonel knew your call sign?" Her jaw tightened. "No, sir." His eyes narrowed. "No?" "I mean, I can't, sir," she corrected. "That information is classified beyond my current clearance." Rivera sat back, studying her. "You're good at this, Sergeant." Calm, measured. "But don't mistake that for invisibility. When you answered that call, you woke up something the rest of us are still trying to understand. Command wants answers, and they're going to get them." He stood, collecting a folder from his desk and sliding it toward her. "You've been reassigned temporarily to assist the investigation. The Office of Special Operations wants a word. You'll report to them at 09:00 tomorrow." Emily took the folder without reaction. "Understood." Rivera paused at the door. "One more thing," he said. "You've got people here who respect you. I'd hate to see that change if inconvenient truths start surfacing." His meaning was clear. She left the office without a word. That night, her quarters were unusually quiet. She sat on the edge of her bunk, the file untouched beside her. The walls felt closer than usual, the hum of the ventilation system almost deafening. Her eyes fell to the small metal box locked inside her footlocker. She hesitated, then unlocked it with a key she hadn't used in years. Inside lay fragments of another life. An old patch bearing a falcon's silhouette, a photo of 6 soldiers smiling under a desert sun, and a metal tag engraved with coordinates. She ran her thumb over the photo. There she was, standing second from the left, younger, eyes bright, uniform dusty. To her right, Mason. Back then, she'd been part of Task Force Haven, an elite covert operations unit assembled for missions that didn't officially exist. Their objective: surgical extractions, intelligence retrieval, and counterinsurgency actions deep in hostile territories. They operated under coding names, untraceable and unacknowledged. Falcon 01 wasn't just her call sign, it was who she was. But that all ended during Operation Meridian. Her breath slowed as she remembered the blinding heat, the static-filled radio chatter, the chaos. Their mission was to extract a foreign informant with intel on a rogue weapons deal. It was supposed to be simple, but someone leaked their coordinates. They were ambushed before they reached the extraction point. 3 of her team were killed instantly. Mason was presumed dead after the explosion. Emily barely survived. When she returned to base weeks later, burned, broken, and half-conscious, she was told the mission didn't exist. The files were sealed, her unit disbanded, and her records scrubbed. She was reassigned to base security quiet, low risk, off the radar. A ghost with a new name. Until yesterday. She closed the box slowly, locking the past away once more, but the memories refused to stay buried. The next morning, Emily walked into a nondescript building marked only by a small sign. Office of Special Operations. Restricted access. The lobby was quiet, sterile, guarded by 2 armed soldiers. A woman in a gray suit met her at the desk. "Sergeant Carter, follow me." She led Emily down a long corridor into an interrogation room that looked more like a conference chamber dimly lit, lined with surveillance monitors. 2 men and a woman sat at the table, all wearing civilian suits. Their expressions were unreadable. "Sergeant," one of the men began, "you can relax. This isn't disciplinary. We're here to clarify some historical discrepancies." Emily stood straight. "Yes, sir." The woman spoke next. "Do you know why Colonel Mason was here?" "I don't," Emily replied. "But you knew him?" "Yes, ma'am. He was your commanding officer during Task Force Haven." Emily's jaw tightened. "That information is classified." The woman smiled faintly. "It was, not anymore." We reopened the file. Emily's pulse quickened. "Why?" The man across the table leaned forward. "Because Mason's not the only one who's come back from the dead. We've had report sightings of other Haven operatives across different installations. Some are trying to make contact. Others are less friendly." He slid a photo across the table. Emily's stomach dropped. It was one of her old teammates, Corporal Diaz, the unit's communication specialist. But the image showed him armed, standing beside known black market operatives in Eastern Europe. "This was taken 3 weeks ago," the man continued. "We believe Mason is here to deliver a warning or a recruitment message. We're still determining which." Emily's throat felt dry. "You think he's rebuilding the unit? Or repurposing it?" the woman said. "Either way, he wanted you. He used your call sign for a reason." Emily stared at the photo, her mind spinning. Diaz was alive. Mason was alive. That meant others could be too. But why now, after all these years? The woman studied her closely. "Tell us, Sergeant, if he reaches out again, what would you do?" Emily hesitated. "I'd follow protocol." "Would you?" the man asked quietly. "Because from what I've read, Falcon 01 wasn't known for following orders." That hit a nerve. She forced her tone to stay even. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Granted. You reopened something that was meant to stay buried. If Mason is back, if he's really moving people, then you're already too late to control it. He doesn't act without a plan." "He never did." The woman leaned back, exchanging a look with her colleagues. "That's what we're afraid of." After the meeting, Emily stepped outside into the cold air, her mind heavy with memories and unanswered questions. She stared at the horizon, where a faint trail of black smoke rose from the distance, the training range. For a brief second, she thought she saw a silhouette standing beyond the fence line, watching. When she blinked, it was gone. Her radio buzzed again. "Gate 2, status check." She raised it slowly, her voice steady. "Fall," she stopped herself. "Gate 2, all clear." But deep down, she knew nothing was clear anymore. Her cover was unraveling. Her past was waking up. And somewhere out there, the ghosts of Task Force Haven were gathering again. The morning after the interrogation, the base felt different. The hum of daily routine continued, engines revving, boots striking asphalt, drills echoing across the parade field. But beneath the surface, there was tension, like a silent current running through every corridor. Word had spread faster than command could contain it. Sergeant Emily Carter had history, the kind that didn't belong in personnel files or casual gossip. She walked through the base with the same calm, disciplined stride as always, but she could feel the stares. The same soldiers who used to nod politely now looked at her like she was a riddle no one had solved. At the gatehouse, Private Reeves greeted her with unease. "Morning, Sarge." "Morning," she replied, setting her bag down. He hesitated before speaking again. "So, that guy Colonel Mason, they say he used to be like special ops?" Emily didn't look up. "You shouldn't believe everything you hear, Reeves." He gave an awkward nod, pretending to check the logbook. "Yeah, of course. Just, people talk." She let out a soft sigh. Let them. But she knew talk could be dangerous. In the military, rumors traveled faster than orders. And the more they whispered, the closer someone up the chain would start connecting dots that were never meant to exist. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Trucks came and went, IDs were checked, documents logged. But Emily's mind wasn't on the gate. It was on the words Mason had said before they took him away. "They're coming, Carter. And when they do, they won't be asking for permission." Those words haunted her. She had heard threats before, but this was different. Mason wasn't warning her. He was inviting her back into something. Around noon, her radio crackled. "Gate 2, report to command. Now." The tone was firm, not a request. Emily exchanged a look with Reeves and left her post, her steps measured. The command building loomed ahead, glass and steel reflecting the noon light. Inside, she was greeted by Captain Rivera again, his expression unreadable. "Sergeant Carter," he began, "we have a situation." He motioned for her to follow him into the operations room. Several officers stood around a large digital map projected on the wall. Satellite images flickered. One of them showed a convoy moving through a desert landscape. The timestamp read 2015. Rivera pointed to the screen. "Recognize this?" Emily's breath caught. The image was unmistakable. It was from Operation Meridian, the mission that ended Task Force Haven. "This footage was declassified this morning," Rivera continued. "Intel found it buried under a mislabeled file in a satellite archive. Look here," he zoomed in. On the far edge of the image, a black SUV could be seen speeding away from the blast zone. Emily frowned. "That's not ours." "No," Rivera agreed. "But it matches the same make and model as the vehicle that appeared at your gate 2 days ago." Her eyes widened. "You're saying Mason was there?" "Then and now." Rivera nodded slowly. "And possibly not alone." He tapped another image. It showed heat signatures, 4 figures moving away from the wreckage. Mason's file claimed only one survivor. But this proved otherwise. "Task Force Haven wasn't wiped out, Sergeant," Rivera said quietly. "They vanished." Emily's stomach tightened. Memories came flooding back. The chaos, the explosion, Mason shouting orders through static. She remembered losing contact with Diaz, with Morgan, with everyone. The idea that they might still be alive didn't bring relief. It brought dread. Rivera's tone softened slightly. "You were one of them, Carter. You know their methods. If they're operating again, we need to know what they're planning." "I'm not that person anymore," she said, her voice low. He crossed his arms. "You don't have a choice. Your past found you. Now it's your responsibility to finish what you started." Emily met his eyes, steady but cold. "I didn't start anything, sir. I followed orders. Orders that got my team killed." Rivera didn't respond. Instead, he handed her a tablet. On it, a new document flickered open. Operation Resurrect. "Intelligence believes Mason and the surviving Haven members are moving under this coding name," he said. "Their target, classified weapons schematics stolen from a NATO contractor last month. We intercepted encrypted chatter linking their old radio frequencies to the transmission that reached your gate." Emily scrolled through the file, her face expressionless. Every line brought her deeper into the world she had spent years escaping. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Simple," Rivera said. "Find out what Mason wants. You knew him better than anyone." She stared at the tablet for a long moment, then set it down. "If I do this, I do it my way." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly why we called you." By evening, she was back at her quarters, the door locked, blinds drawn. The room felt smaller now, the walls echoing with ghosts. She opened the locked box again, the one containing the remnants of her past, and took out the patch, the coordinates, and the photo. She studied Mason's face in the picture. There had been trust there once, a bond built in blood and silence. But trust had died in that desert. Her gaze dropped to the coordinates engraved on the small metal tag. She had always assumed they marked the ambush site. But now, looking closely, she realized something. One of the digits was different. Mason's version of the coordinates had ended with a 7. Hers ended with a 9. A code. She pulled up her map on the tablet and entered the updated sequence. The new location blinked onto the screen, a decommissioned communications facility 50 miles from the base. Officially inactive. Unofficially? It could be anything. She knew what she had to do. That night, Emily drove out past the perimeter in an unmarked Jeep. The road stretched endlessly, the landscape bathed in moonlight. Every mile took her further from the safety of rank and routine, and closer to the shadow she used to be. When she reached the old facility, it was dark, silent, the fence rusted and half collapsed. She slipped through a gap and approached the main building. The heavy door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, dust floated through the air like ghosts of forgotten missions. She moved carefully, flashlight cutting through the dark. Her boots echoed softly on the concrete floor. And then, faintly, she heard it. Static. Her heart skipped. The sound came from an old radio console, still glowing faintly on a desk. She approached it slowly, her hand trembling slightly. The equipment shouldn't have power, yet it was alive, humming quietly. She adjusted the frequency dial. The static cleared, and a voice came through. "Falcon 01. Took you long enough." Her breath caught. The voice was unmistakable. "Mason," she said softly. "Welcome home," he replied. "Now you understand? They lied to both of us. Meridian wasn't a mission. It was a cover-up. You and I were never meant to come back." Emily's throat tightened. "What do you want?" "The truth," Mason said. "And I think deep down, you do too. They erased us, Carter. Made us ghosts. But ghosts have a way of haunting back." The line crackled, then cut out. The radio went dead. She stood there for a long moment, frozen. The room felt colder suddenly, heavier. She looked around, and in the far corner, she saw something faintly glint under her light. A small patch of fabric, half buried in dust. She picked it up. The Falcon insignia. Her old unit's emblem. Someone had been here recently. Emily closed her eyes, steadying her breathing. Mason wasn't gone. Diaz wasn't gone. And whatever Operation Resurrect was, it wasn't over. As she stepped back into the night, she glanced once more toward the horizon. The wind carried the distant hum of helicopters. Reinforcements or watchers, she couldn't tell. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The past hadn't just returned. It was moving closer. And this time, it wasn't coming quietly. The following morning broke under a muted sky, thick with low clouds that rolled over the base like smoke. A drizzle fell against the windows, streaking the glass in narrow, uncertain lines. Sergeant Emily Carter sat on the edge of her bunk, boots unlaced, the radio call still echoing in her head. "Welcome home, Falcon 01. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the old insignia, that silver falcon burning in the dust. Mason was alive. And if he was alive, everything she'd been told for the past decade had been a lie. A sharp knock rattled the door. Sergeant Carter. It was Captain Rivera again. He didn't wait for her permission to enter. His uniform was crisp, but his face showed the fatigue of someone who'd been in meetings since dawn. "Command wants you in the briefing room," he said quietly. She didn't ask why. She already knew. The past was done hiding. The command building hummed with tension when she arrived. The usual chatter of officers was gone. Only the low murmur, urgency filled the air. 2 MPs flanked the main door, checking clearances twice before letting anyone through. Inside, the room was dim, except for the blue glow of a projector. General Thornton stood at the head of the table, a man in his late 50s, built like granite and cold as steel. His presence silenced the room immediately. As Emily entered, all eyes turned toward her. Some recognized her name from the gate incident. Others had already heard whispers of Falcon 01. Thornton didn't waste time. "At ease, Sergeant," he said, his voice low but firm. "You've stepped into something bigger than your post at the gate." Emily stood straight, hands behind her back. "Sir." He nodded to Rivera, who dimmed the lights further and started a feed on the projector. A satellite image appeared, the same old communications facility she'd visited the night before. "Early this morning," Thornton began, "our surveillance drones picked up energy readings from this decommissioned site. Power spikes, movement, someone's operating equipment that hasn't been active for years." Emily's jaw clenched. "They're not just hiding anymore," she said softly. "Exactly," Thornton replied. "Whoever Mason's working with is preparing something." The image shifted, now showing the interior layout of the facility. Red circles marked heat signatures. 4 of them. 4 individuals, armed, disciplined, and careful. Their movements suggest military coordination. One of them was seen wearing Task Force Haven insignia. A murmur went around the room. Task Force Haven, the name that had been scrubbed from every record, was now on the screen. Undeniable. Thornton continued, "We've also intercepted partial transmissions using an encrypted frequency from Operation Meridian, the same one, used during the 2015 engagement." He turned toward Emily. "That's where you come in, Sergeant Carter." She met his gaze evenly. "You think they'll talk to me?" He nodded. "You're the only one they might trust. Mason's already reached out, using your call sign. That wasn't random. It was an invitation." Her expression didn't change, but inside she felt the weight pressing down again. "And if I refuse?" Thornton didn't flinch. "Then you'll be confined to base while we handle it our way. But I don't think you want that." She looked at the map again, the lines, the coordinates, the signatures moving slowly across the grid. Each one was a ghost she used to know. "What's the mission?" she asked. Thornton exchanged a glance with Rivera before responding. "Operation Resurrect." The word hit her like a physical blow. "That's Mason's code," she said immediately. "Yes," Thornton said. "But it's not just his anymore. It's ours now. We're taking back control of what they started." He gestured to the screen again, where a dossier appeared. Resurrect Protocol, Stage 2. Intelligence suggests Mason's group is after something buried within our own archives. An experimental weapons design, codenamed Spectre 7. It's not a bomb, not a virus, it's data. A defense algorithm capable of overriding autonomous weapons systems across multiple nations. Whoever controls it can control warfare itself. Emily exhaled slowly. And we built it. Thornton nodded grimly. And we buried it after the Meridian incident. Now someone wants it back. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the soft hum of the projector. Rivera stepped forward and slid a sealed folder across the table toward Emily. Inside, you'll find full mission clearance, tactical schematics, and your reinstated classification. Emily looked down at the folder. Her name was printed across the top, Carter Emily R., followed by an old title she hadn't seen years. Status: Active, Task Force Haven, reinstated. Her throat tightened. You're reinstating me? Thornton's gaze hardened. You never stopped being one of them. You just forgot what you were capable of. She stayed silent, processing the gravity of his words. Rivera added quietly, You'll lead a recon team tonight. Unmarked, no insignia. If Mason's there, you make contact. No engagement unless fired upon. Your objective is intel, not capture. Emily's eyes flicked toward the screen again, the dark facility in the desert, pulsing with faint heat signatures. I'll need my own team, she said. Not base personnel. People who won't ask questions. Thornton gave a curt nod. You'll have them. They've been briefed and are waiting in Hangar 4. Use whatever you need. Discretion is critical. We can't afford a media leak. If this operation goes public, the political fallout could be catastrophic. She straightened, saluted sharply, and turned to leave. But before she could reach the door, Thornton spoke again, his tone quieter, almost hesitant. Sergeant Carter. She stopped. For what it's worth, he said, some of us still remember what Haven did, the missions that never made it to the reports. You were the best of them. She met his eyes. Then you know what that means, she said softly. People like us don't come back clean. And then she walked out, the folder clutched tightly in her hand. The rain had turned to a steady downpour by the time she reached Hangar 4. The metal roof echoed with rhythmic pounding, the air smelling of oil and jet fuel. Inside, 4 figures stood by a tactical truck, checking weapons and gear. When she entered, they turned one by one, sharp, alert. Rivera hadn't exaggerated. These weren't rookies. A tall, lean man with a scar across his jaw stepped forward. Ma'am, he greeted curtly. Name's Daniels. I'll be your lead driver. Next, a woman with sharp eyes and a steady hand gave a nod. Lieutenant Ross, Recon and Comms. 2 more followed. Ortiz and Bailey, both silent, experienced, their stances speaking more than words ever could. Emily looked them over carefully. They weren't Haven, but they were capable. And for tonight, that would have to do. Load up, she ordered. We move in 10. Ross adjusted her headset. Rules of engagement? Eyes open. Weapons ready. But no shots unless I say so. Daniels raised a brow. And if we find them? Emily paused. Then we listen. Mason's not just an enemy. He's a man with a story. And that story might be the difference between stopping this and starting a war. They nodded silently, the air thick with anticipation. As the truck rumbled to life and rolled out of the hangar, the rain eased, leaving streaks of silver moonlight across the desert road. The facility lay miles ahead, an abandoned skeleton of a place that had already changed the course of her life once. Inside the vehicle, Emily stared out the window, lost in thought. Her reflection stared back, The same uniform, same rank, but she wasn't the same person. Falcon 01 wasn't just a call sign anymore. It was a shadow that demanded to be acknowledged. Ross broke the silence. "You ever worked with Mason before, ma'am?" Emily's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "He used to be my CO," she said quietly. "Before everything went wrong." Daniels gave a low whistle. "Guess this is personal then." She didn't respond. But deep down, he was right. The truck sped deeper into the desert, the night air heavy with electricity. Emily tightened her grip on her weapon as they neared the coordinates. Ahead, in the distance, faint lights flickered, the same facility she'd found days ago. Only this time, it wasn't empty. Through the night vision scope, Ross spotted movement, figures patrolling with silent precision. Emily's heart beat steadily. Every step, every breath was muscle memory now. "Team," she whispered into her mic, "we're going in quiet. Stay sharp." And as the truck came to a halt behind a ridge, Emily Carter, Falcon 01, slipped back into the world she thought she'd buried forever. The mission had begun. The desert was quiet, too quiet for a night like this. The moon hung low, pale and heavy in the sky, casting thin silver streaks across the sand. Wind whispered through the dunes, carrying a chill that cut through fabric and bone alike. Emily crouched behind a ridge, binoculars in hand, eyes scanning the half-collapsed communications facility below. The structure was a scar in the earth, rusted towers, sagging fences, and a dozen flickering lights where there should have been none. Ross's voice came softly through the headset. 4 confirmed hostiles on exterior patrol. Heat signatures inside suggest at least 2 more. Possible servers still active. Emily lowered the binoculars and glanced at Daniels, who was adjusting the suppressor on his rifle. Positions? North Tower, South Gate, and 2 rotating along the perimeter, Ross replied. They're running a pattern, clean, military style. No random movement. Emily nodded slowly. They're trained. They know what they're doing. Ortiz shifted next to her, the faint sound of metal clicking as he rechecked his weapon. "You think it's Haven?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes lingered on the far corner of the compound, where the command shack stood, lights glowing dimly through the dust-streaked windows. "I think it's what's left of him," she said finally. "And that's enough." The team moved in silence, their boots sinking softly into the sand. Each step was calculated, rehearsed. Emily led the line, moving like a shadow through the wind. Years of training came back effortlessly, muscle memory sharper than fear. They reached the outer fence. Daniels produced a small wire cutter and snipped a narrow opening, holding it apart as Emily slipped through first. The air smelled of rust and old power lines. Inside, the facility was eerily still. The walls were tagged with faded insignias and old warning signs. Come link restricted. Access. Ross held up a hand and pointed toward a security camera hanging limply from its mount. "Inactive," she whispered. Emily motioned forward. "Let's move." South corridor first. They crept toward the building, hugging the walls. Every sound, the crunch of sand, the distant hum of equipment felt magnified. Then, a voice broke through the static of Emily's earpiece. "Falcon 01. You shouldn't have come." She froze. "Mason," she said quietly into the mic. Her team looked at her sharply. "You brought company," the voice continued, calm and steady. "You always did follow orders too well. But this isn't their fight, Carter. You know that." Emily motioned her team to hold position and pressed a finger to her earpiece. "Then make it mine. I'm here for you, not them." A soft laugh crackled through the line. "Still playing the hero? You think they sent you here to stop me? No, they sent you here to die quietly, like before." The transmission cut. Daniels muttered under his breath. How the hell is he on our comms? Ross scanned her equipment. He's piggybacking our frequency. Military-grade encryption. He shouldn't be able to do that unless... Emily finished for her. Unless he's using a Haven encryption key. That meant Mason still had access to codes buried so deep, even Command couldn't erase them. They reached the first structure. A low building with shattered windows and cables snaking out from beneath the door. Emily peered inside. Faint blue light flickered across the walls. Servers. Dozens of them. Ortiz slipped past her, scanning the room with a thermal scope. 2 bodies inside, he whispered. Still warm. Emily nodded. Move. They entered quietly. Inside, the hum of active servers filled the space like a pulse. Data streams blinked across monitors, encrypted sequences scrolling faster than the eye could follow. Ross crouched near one of the terminals. They're pulling something. Could be Spectre 7. Can you stop it? Emily asked. Ross hesitated. If I had a direct uplink, maybe. But they've rerouted the connection to an off-site relay. They're smarter than I thought. Daniels stepped toward one of the fallen figures on the floor. One's down. Looks like a gunshot to the chest. Emily looked at the other. A man slumped over a keyboard, blood dried across his sleeve. She knelt, turning him over gently. His face was familiar, faintly scarred, sun-beaten. Captain Diaz, she breathed. Ross's eyes widened. That's one of yours. Was, Emily corrected softly. He died in Meridian. Or so they said. Her chest tightened. Mason had been right. They'd all been erased. Before she could process further, a low rumble echoed outside. Vehicles, multiple engines approaching fast. Ross's hand flew to her headset. 3 trucks inbound, south perimeter. Looks like reinforcements. Emily cursed under her breath. They knew we were coming. Daniels moved toward the door. We fall back? Negative, Emily ordered. We hold position until we get confirmation on what they're pulling. The lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied again. The monitor shifted, and a new line of code began appearing across the screen. Ross frowned. They're initiating a full data transfer. Whatever they're moving, it's happening now. Emily grabbed her mic. Command, this is Falcon 01. Facility compromised. Multiple hostiles inbound. Confirm Spectre 7 protocol. Static. No response. She tried again. Command, do you copy? Nothing. Daniels cursed softly. We're jammed. Ross tapped her console. Not jammed, looped. They're rerouting our signal through the same relay. Mason's shutting us out. Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself. All right. Then we adapt. Ross, cut their uplink manually. Ortiz, cover the north entrance. Daniels, you're with me. The team moved instantly, each step echoing with purpose. Ross crawled beneath the server racks, sparks flying as she cut through a tangle of fiber lines. The hum of the machines began to falter. Almost there, a flash of movement. Gunfire erupted from the doorway, ripping through the silence. Daniels fired back, dropping to one knee. Contact. South entrance. Emily dove for cover, returning fire. The air filled with deafening cracks and ricochets. Ortiz's voice crackled through the comm. 2 more coming around the north side. Emily shouted, Ross, kill that feed. I'm trying. The servers sparked again, the lights dimming one by one, and then, suddenly, the room went dark. The hum stopped. The transfer halted. Got it. Ross yelled. Daniels grinned briefly. Nice work. A single shot cut him off. He fell back, gasping, a crimson bloom spreading across his shoulder. Daniels. Emily grabbed him, dragging him behind cover. Ross crawled over, pressing a hand to the wound. It's deep but clean. He'll live. Emily's jaw tightened. We're leaving, now. They fired suppressive rounds toward the exits, moving in formation. Emily's mind was razor-sharp, every muscle tuned for survival. The world shrank to sound, light, and instinct. They burst into the open air, just as the first of the enemy vehicles roared through the main gate. Men in tactical gear spilled out, their weapons flashing in the moonlight. Ross threw a smoke grenade. The desert exploded into a haze of gray. Move, Emily shouted, leading the charge toward the ridge. Bullets cut through the smoke behind them. The sand erupted in bursts as they ran. Ortiz covered their retreat, firing short controlled bursts until his magazine clicked empty. By the time they reached the ridge, Daniels was pale but conscious. Emily helped him into the truck. Ross jumped behind the wheel, slamming the accelerator. The vehicle tore through the dunes, engine howling. In the rearview mirror, Emily watched the facility fade into the distance, flames rising from its roof. Ross spoke between breaths. What the hell was that, ma'am? Emily stared ahead, voice steady but cold. That was the past reminding us it's not done. Daniels groaned softly, clutching his shoulder. Did we stop them? Emily shook her head. No, we delayed them. That's all. Ross frowned. Then what did Mason get? Emily didn't answer. Her gaze was distant, lost somewhere in the horizon. Because deep down, she already knew. When the servers went dark, Mason hadn't lost the data. He'd finished transferring it, somewhere command couldn't reach. He wanted her there that night. Not to kill her. Not to stop her. To show her she was still part of it. Hours later, back at the base, the medical team whisked Daniels away. Rivera stood waiting near the hangar, his expression grim. Report, he demanded. Emily handed him a flash drive Ross had pulled from the servers. Partial recovery. The rest is gone. Mason was 2 steps ahead. Rivera exhaled sharply. You mean he has Spectre 7? She nodded slowly. And worse, she added quietly, he knows we're coming. The captain looked at her for a long moment. Then what's next? Emily's eyes hardened. We stop running defense. We take the fight to him. Rivera's lips pressed into a thin line. That's not protocol. She met his stare. Neither is surviving a ghost operation. And with that, she turned and walked into the darkness of the base. Her silhouette vanishing under the floodlights. Falcon 01 reborn and ready for the storm that was coming. The sun rose over the base in muted gold, staining the horizon with thin streaks of red, like blood diluted in water. The desert wind carried a strange silence, the kind that came after chaos. Inside the operations center, the atmosphere was heavy with exhaustion and disbelief. Sergeant Emily Carter stood at the command table, her uniform streaked with dust and blood. The smell of gunpowder and burnt metal still clung to her. She hadn't changed, hadn't rested, hadn't spoken much since returning from the failed raid. She just waited until now. Captain Rivera placed a hard drive onto the table. That's the only data Ross could recover from the servers. The rest was transmitted off-site, encrypted through 3 unknown relays. We're still trying to trace the path, but it's messy. General Thornton stood beside him, jaw clenched. Messy isn't good enough. Mason now has a weapon that can override autonomous defenses across half the world. If that data leaks, we won't just lose control, we'll lose deterrence. Rivera looked at Emily. He knew we were coming. Every move we made, he anticipated it. Emily didn't respond. She stared at the hard drive like it was a ghost staring back. Her reflection flickered faintly in its polished surface. Tired eyes, dark circles, a face worn by too many secrets. Thornton turned toward her. "Sergeant Carter," he said firmly. "You were right. Mason's alive, and he's not working alone. He's activated something bigger than Haven ever was. We need to stop him before he releases Spectre 7. Her gaze lifted slowly. "Do we know where he's going?" Rivera pressed a button on the console. A holographic map blinked to life, coordinates flickering in red. Satellite data suggests multiple pings across old military installations. But this one, he zoomed in on a cluster of mountains near the Nevada border. This one's different. Heavy power surges, unregistered vehicles, encrypted signals bouncing off abandoned radar arrays. Emily's jaw tightened. "He's building a command hub." Thornton nodded. "And he's doing it on new soil." For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of what that meant settled on the room like a storm cloud. Finally, Thornton broke the silence. "Carter, you're leading this mission. You know Mason better than anyone. Find him, retrieve the Spectre 7 data, and shut him down. Permanently." Emily straightened, her expression unreadable. "Understood, sir." Rivera handed her a dossier. "Your team's already prepping in Hangar 4. Daniels has been cleared for light duty. Ross and Ortiz are ready. You'll deploy within the hour." She nodded once, took the file, and turned for the door. Thornton called after her. "Sergeant." She paused. "Bring him in alive if possible," he said, voice low. "But if not," his expression hardened. "You know what has to be done." Emily didn't answer. She didn't have to. Outside, the base was alive with movement. Soldiers hustling, vehicles being refueled, the air thick with tension. The sky had shifted from red to orange, the kind of light that made everything seem fragile. At Hangar 4, the team was already loading gear. Daniels looked pale but determined, his arm in a sling. Ross double-checked the comm units, while Ortiz cleaned his rifle with quiet precision. When Emily approached, they all straightened instinctively. Something about her presence commanded respect now, not because of rank, but because of what she'd endured. "Briefing," she said simply. They gathered around the back of the tactical truck. She spread the map across the hood, tracing her finger along the highlighted route. "Mason's moved to a decommissioned radar station in the Nevada ranges," she began. "It's buried under layers of old satellite interference fields. Command believes he's using it as a control node to finalize Spectre 7. Once the system's online, he can access defense satellites, drone fleets, automated countermeasures, you name it. If he uploads the key, he won't just hold power, he'll be power." Ross frowned. "What's his endgame? Why steal Spectre 7? Why not sell it?" Emily's eyes hardened. "Because Mason doesn't want money. He wants truth and revenge. He thinks the system that abandoned Haven deserves to burn." Ortiz nodded slowly. "So we hit him before he lights the match." "Exactly," Emily said. "We go in fast, low, and silent. We take back what's ours before he makes the world his battlefield." She folded the map and met each of their eyes. "You all know what this means. If we fail, there won't be another chance." Daniels gave a half-smile. "Wouldn't be the first time we've done the impossible." Ross chuckled softly. "And probably not the last." "Gear up," Emily ordered. "We move in 10. The drive into the mountains was long and tense. The terrain grew steeper, the road narrower, the air thinner. By nightfall, the truck's headlights were the only thing cutting through the fog. When they reached the ridge overlooking the radar station, the view below was surreal. Dozens of floodlights illuminating the skeletal remains of old towers. Generators rumbled faintly in the distance. Antennas blinked red against the night. Ross adjusted her scope. Multiple hostiles. Heat readings everywhere. Looks like they've fortified the lower level. Ortiz scanned the perimeter. I count at least 20. Probably more inside. Daniels looked at Emily. Still want to go in quiet? She smiled faintly, a kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. We go quiet until we can't. They moved down the slope, shadows blending with shadows. Every step felt like a heartbeat. Every sound carried too far. Near the outer fence, they found a gap, deliberate, as if someone had left it open. Ross frowned. That's a trap. Emily nodded. Yes, but it's also the only door. They slipped through, rifles raised, senses heightened. Inside the compound, the noise was faint but constant. Generators humming, machinery whirring, footsteps echoing from somewhere deep within. Emily led them toward the central building, a bunker half buried in rock. The door was open just enough for light to spill out. Inside, voices murmured, calm, methodical, rehearsed. She peered through the gap and froze. Mason stood at the console, his back turned, the blue glow of monitors painting his silhouette in ghostly light. His hair was grayer now, his posture heavier, but the authority in his movements was unchanged. Around him, 2 armed men worked feverishly at terminals. The screens flashed with lines of code, Spectre 7 initializing. Ross, Emily whispered, cut power to the generator. Ross nodded and slipped away silently. Emily and the others waited. Seconds felt like hours. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and died. Darkness swallowed the bunker. Emily moved fast, signaling the others forward. They entered silently, weapons raised. The room was pitch black except for the dim glow of emergency lights. Mason's voice broke the silence, calm, almost welcoming. I knew you'd come, Carter. You are always too stubborn to stay buried. Emily stepped forward, rifle aimed steady. Turn around. He did, slowly, hands raised just enough to show no weapon. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, it was like no time had passed. You shouldn't have brought them, he said quietly. This isn't their war. This isn't yours either, she replied. Stand down. End it. He smiled faintly, the expression both weary and defiant. End it? You think this ends with me? They lied to you, Carter. They lied to all of us. Spectre 7 isn't a weapon. It's insurance. Against them. You stole military data, Mason, she said coldly. That's treason. And following orders that kill your own? He shot back. That's patriotism? The tension crackled between them like static. Behind Emily, Ortiz and Daniels flanked the console, covering the other men. Ross reappeared, slipping back through the door. Generators offline, ma'am, she whispered. Mason tilted his head. You think cutting the lights will stop this? The upload's already begun. You're too late. Emily's pulse quickened. What upload? He pointed toward the main screen, flickering lines of data still crawling upward despite the power cut. Spectre 7 uplink, 92% complete. Ross swore under her breath. He's running on backup power. Emily moved closer, weapon steady. Cancel it, Mason, now. He shook his head slowly. You can't kill an idea, Carter. You can only decide which side you're on. Without warning, gunfire exploded from the side corridor, Mason's men opening fire. Emily dove for cover, shouting, "Take them down." Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through consoles and concrete. Sparks rained down like fire. Ortiz returned fire, dropping one hostile. Ross dragged Daniels behind a metal crate as another round ricocheted inches from her head. Emily crawled toward the console, her fingers flying across the keys, trying to stop the upload. But Mason lunged forward, slamming his hand against the screen, overriding her command. Upload, 99%. She turned the rifle on him, voice low but shaking. "Don't do it." He looked at her with something almost like pity. "You already did years ago." 100%. Upload complete. The monitors flashed white. For a second, the room was silent. No gunfire, no shouting, just a sharp, blinding light. Then the power died completely. When the emergency lights flickered back on, Mason was gone. The console was shattered, and the words glowing faintly across the cracked screen made Emily's blood run cold. Spectre 7. Activated. Global relay sequence initialized. Ross whispered, "What the hell does that mean?" Emily stared at the screen, her voice hollow. "It means he's not just in control of the data anymore." She turned toward the door, eyes blazing. "He's in control of the world's defenses." The desert dawn broke cold and quiet over the base. The air smelled faintly of ozone and scorched metal, remnants of the firefight that had rocked the radar facility the night before. Sergeant Emily Carter stood at the edge of the operations center's balcony, staring at the mountains in the distance, her reflection mirrored faintly in the glass. Behind her, the base was alive with activity, military personnel analyzing data, communication officers tracing encrypted signals, and pilots preparing for reconnaissance flights. But all Emily could focus on was Mason and the words flashing across the cracked console from the night before. Spectre 7, activated. Global relay sequence initialized. Her hands rested lightly on the balcony railing, knuckles white. The power Mason now wielded wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. Autonomous drones, defense satellites, even secure communication networks across multiple allied nations were potentially compromised. A single misstep could escalate into a global crisis. Ross approached, boots silent on the concrete. Her face was pale but resolute. "He's already moving," she said quietly. "The relay signals are bouncing all over the southwestern grid. He's controlling nodes in ways even command can't track." Emily nodded without turning. "Then we adapt. We've survived worse. We can do this." Daniels came up behind them, his sling still in place, but his eyes sharp. "With all due respect, ma'am, this isn't just worse. He's sitting on everything we've ever built. How do we stop someone who controls the battlefield without touching it?" Emily's eyes finally met his, burning with intensity. "By reminding him who trained us, who survived him, and who's still alive to take him down. He underestimated what happens when Falcon 01 decides it's her fight." Ortiz joined, folding his arms. "You're really going back in there?" "Yes," Emily said simply. "We have one shot, one team, and one chance to end this before Spectre 7 decides the world doesn't need human oversight anymore." The plan was swift and precise. A small recon chopper would drop Emily, Ross, and Ortiz near the mountains, where Mason's backup facility had been traced. A secret outpost, previously used for classified drone testing. Daniels would remain in command, coordinating from the base, keeping satellite and communication support active. As the helicopter lifted, Emily felt the familiar hum of adrenaline, the same calm yet intense focus she had on every mission before Meridian. The desert stretched below, vast and empty, but she knew it was never truly empty. Mason had already embedded himself in the network, turning every abandoned facility, every dormant relay into a trap. The helicopter touched down near the ridge overlooking the facility. The team disembarked silently, boots crunching on gravel and sparse brush. Emily raised a gloved hand. "We go in shadows, eyes open. Ross, you'll handle communications and interference. Ortiz, watch the perimeter. I'll confront Mason directly." The path to the main building was steep and lined with jagged rocks. Each step demanded patience. Every movement risked detection. But Emily led with the confidence of someone who had walked through fire before, literally and metaphorically. At the edge of the facility, she crouched behind a fallen antenna, scanning the interior through night vision goggles. Figures moved inside, 2 armed men patrolling, while Mason worked at a console in the center, back turned. The faint glow of multiple screens illuminated his hunched form, hands flying over the keyboard. He hasn't noticed yet, Emily thought. Ross leaned beside her. Ready? Emily's finger hovered over the suppressor release. Always. Ortiz grunted. Don't make this a hero moment. Emily didn't answer. This wasn't heroism. It was survival and responsibility. They slipped inside quietly. Emily's movements were precise, practiced, ghost-like. Every muscle remembered meridian. Every instinct screamed familiarity. They reached the central room, the hum of active machinery surrounding them. Mason didn't look up. Falcon 01, he said, calm as ever. I wondered if you'd come. Emily stepped forward, rifle trained steadily. This ends now, Mason. Turn off Spectre 7, or I'll do it myself. He chuckled softly, still not turning around. You think it's that simple? It's already too late. The sequence is live. Every node under my control. Every satellite. Every defense system. You can't stop it. Emily's jaw tightened. Watch me. Without warning, Mason pressed a button on the console. A holographic interface projected above the room, displaying dozens of drones taking flight, satellites adjusting orbit, and grids lighting up like circuits on fire. Ross cursed softly. He's already moving assets. Emily moved closer, pressing the barrel of her rifle near Mason's shoulder. Step away. Finally, he turned, face weary but defiant. You always were the stubborn one. I'm the one still standing, Emily said firmly. And I'm not alone. Ortiz and Ross flanked her, covering the entrances. Mason's eyes flickered toward them, weighing his options. You don't understand, he said quietly. Spectre 7 isn't about control. It's about proof. Proof that we were erased. That the world forgot us. And now, they'll remember. Emily's heart ached at the old familiarity in his voice, the echoes of the man she had once respected. And if you destroy everything in revenge? She asked. Does that fix anything? He hesitated. For the first time in years, Mason faltered. I just wanted to be remembered, he whispered. Emily's finger tightened on the trigger, but she didn't fire. You will be remembered, she said softly. But not like this. Not by breaking everything we fought for. Help us take it down. Help us fix it before it fixes us, by force. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Mason slowly raised his hands, signaling surrender. Fine, he said. But if we fail? Emily lowered her weapon slightly. We won't. Together, they worked to dismantle the relay nodes, override the uplink, and secure the data. Ross's fingers flew over the systems. Ortiz provided cover, and Emily guided Mason through the necessary steps. It was tense, delicate work. One wrong keystroke could trigger the automated sequences Mason had set in motion. Finally, the monitors dimmed. The drones returned to standby mode. Satellites reverted to their pre-programmed positions, and the red lights indicating active Spectre 7 nodes vanished. The global network was safe for now. Mason slumped back, exhausted. It's done, he said, voice trembling. Emily stared at him, emotions conflicting. Relief, anger, sorrow. It's over, Mason. Now you answer for everything else. But at least the world gets a chance to keep moving forward. Back at the base, the aftermath was chaotic, but controlled. Command debriefed Emily and her team. Data was secured, Mason was in custody, and the rogue members of Task Force Haven were being tracked. Thornton approached Emily in the debrief room. You did what I thought impossible, he said quietly. You saved more than just the base or the mission. You saved control of the world's defenses. Emily nodded, exhausted but unwavering. I did what needed to be done, sir. Rivera added, the call sign. Falcon 01. It's more than just a name now. You've earned it, and everyone at the base knows it. Emily allowed herself a small smile, feeling the weight of years lift slightly. Her name had been quiet, almost forgotten at the gate. But now it was remembered. Revered, even. In the quiet moments afterward, Emily stood once more at the gate where she had started. Soldiers passed, some nodding, some unaware. She touched the patch of her old uniform, the Falcon insignia, a symbol of her past, her trials, and her survival. Her radio crackled softly. Falcon 01, a check. All secure. She responded, calm and steady. Copy that. All secure. For a moment, she allowed herself to just be not the soldier erased by history, not the ghost of Task Force Haven, but Emily Carter. And yet, the call sign lived on, echoing in every corner of the base, a reminder of resilience, courage, and quiet strength. Because in the end, it wasn't the weapons, the codes, or even Mason's wrath that mattered. It was her presence, quiet, steadfast, and unyielding, that made the difference. And with that, Emily walked away from the gate, ready for whatever came next.